want to take a moment to thank all of my supporters and everyone. So with that being said, let's get on down to today's lecture, which is how I survived working 41 years of my adult life in the workforce prior to retiring September of 2023. And that 41 years of my adult life of working in the workforce consists of military, consists of state government, and consists of corporate America. And one of the things I did throughout my journey, and hear me, world, throughout my 41 years of working in this working in this workforce of my adult life, throughout that time, I've been promoted in military meritorious promotions within my profession as a licensed clinical addiction expert. Promotions throughout that journey, raises, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the things that I did throughout that process, always, even when I was a very young woman in the military, I was got my honorable discharge. I served during the Desert Storm era in the United States Marine Corps, and even way back then, I got my promotions meritoriously. But one of the commonalities, looking back in retrospect, in my 41 year of working, one of the commonalities I've always had is I always went to work, always. And number one, I kept folks out of my business, real talk. I was cordial to everyone, even as a very young woman in my early 20s, joining the Marine Corps and entered into the fleet. Like I said, I was cordial with everybody. I state policies and procedures in the military uniform, code of conduct, corporate jobs, HR policies and procedures, state government jobs, HR policies and procedures. But I always had the mindset, even way back then, all the way up until I retired September 2023, I kept folks out of my business, real talk. I did not go on none of these jobs to establish friendships. I was cordial to everyone, but when it came down to my personal business, my life, what was going on with my life outside of that job, throughout my 41 year history, I always kept that separate, real talk. Number two thing that I've always done is I never ever, and even up until now, in any shape, form, or fashion, in my 41 years of working in the workforce in my adult life, I did not engage in gossip, negativity, toxic people, even when I was in the Marine Corps, in any shape, form, or fashion. I credit a lot of the skills that I had entering in the workforce in my early 20s, even working in high school. A lot of that has to do with my upbringing, real talk, and utilizing some of that helped me survive in the workforce for 41 years of my adult life. Never gotten written up, gotten promotions meritoriously, raises, and etc., because I knew the importance of keeping that job separate from Marie Holliday, separate from my personal life, because there's a work persona and there's a personal life persona. I did not enmesh the two, real talk. I can't even recall, and some of my co-workers who worked shoulder to shoulder with me for 17 years for state government throughout that journey. Everybody knew, like I said, I was cordial with everybody. I did not go to lunch with nobody, because I consider my lunchtime is sacred. That was my time. A lot of times I would always bring my lunch. A lot of times I would take my lunch, sit in my car, listen to music, enjoy my lunch. That was my sacred time. And although throughout 41 years of working in the workforce, many of my co-workers would invite me to, how some people do group lunch, but no, I cordially and respectfully declined, because that was my time. And that's just one example of many things I did to be able to survive in this workforce. But the most important thing is I made sure that I was there, and I made sure that I performed the essential functions of my job, follow policy and procedure. It's cordial to everybody, but I kept folks out of my business, real talk. And I can remember, like I said, I retired September of 2023, and nobody, because I kept folks out of my business. There were people who were working shoulder to shoulder with me for 12, 15 years. Nobody knew, not even my immediate supervisor. Nobody knew that I was retiring September of 2023. There were people who were working shoulder to shoulder with me for years. They didn't even know. The only person, because I kept folks out of my business, the only person who knew that I was retiring was HR, because they had to do my paperwork for my retirement and my pension and all of that. The HR knew, but nobody else knew. Not even people who worked with me for years. Nobody in that organization, and I retired from state government, knew I was retiring until it was my last hour on that job. Real talk. And I exited up out of this workforce September of 2023 after working 41 years of my adult life. And that consists of military, that consists of state government, that consists of corporate America. And I've always, and even now, even in my private life, I only have a very few people in my private world, real talk, because I believe in valuing my peace, real talk. And I use that same skill set to navigate through these jobs, to navigate in the workforce. Like I said, I got many of my promotions in the military meritoriously. Even within my career, working 25 years as a licensed clinical addiction expert, I rose up the ranks. And another key thing that I did throughout my 41-year history of working in the workforce, I always did things outside of that job, outside of that W-2 job, to enhance myself, to improve myself, in all areas, to cultivate and to hone in on, to develop myself outside of that job, real talk. So that job was that I kept that my employer, it was a space for that, but there was a space outside of that job where I was enhancing and developing and cultivating my knowledge, my skills, and my talents outside of that job. For example, I can remember young in my career in the field of addiction, I can clearly remember that when I returned back to school to get my master's degree, to elevate my profession to a whole nother level. And no one knew, not even my supervisors, no one knew, not even my coworkers knew that I was going to school working on my master's degree, because my schedule was Monday through Friday. And I can clearly remember when I went to graduate school, it was an accelerated graduate school. It was in the class, no online. My class was Friday from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. and Saturday and Sunday from 9 to 5. That was an accelerated graduate program. So that means every Friday when I got off work at 5 o'clock, I knew I had 1 hour to get to class. And I say this to say, nobody in that organization knew I was even in school until I graduated and had that master's degree in my hand. And the only reason they found out that I had that master's degree, because when I got my master's degree conferred, I submitted that information to HR. And you know how on a lot of jobs, when employees accomplish a tremendous feat, rather it's getting a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, or a promotion or something above and beyond, HR will send out information like in a newsletter to alert the organization. And that's what they did with me. That, hey, by the way, Marie Holliday got her master's degree conferred. And only when HR did that, that's when my immediate coworkers literally came to my office. And that was a 2-year master's program, people. My immediate coworkers, when they saw that alert came from HR, congratulate me on getting my master's degree, they had no idea, better yet, that I was in graduate school, number one. Many of my coworkers said they had no idea I was even in graduate school. And number two, they had no idea that I had graduated and already had the master's degree conferred. And many of them literally said that they wish I would have told them they would have came to my graduation ceremony. But I say that to say, all throughout my 41 year of working in the workforce, I kept my personal business separate from that job. I was about going to work, performing the essential functions of my job, adhering to policies and procedures. Yeah, I was cordial to everybody, but I made sure I kept folks out of my business. Real talk. They didn't know whether or not I had kids or didn't have kids, or was I married or not married. What was that? I never went to work, and I believe by me doing that, by having those boundaries, like I said, I'm cordial to everybody, but I have no doubt by me having those boundaries and understand that there is a difference from your work job or persona and your real life personal persona. I kept it separate. It kept me out of the drama. And people knew if a person came to my office, if the conversation about the mission, goals, and objective of the organization, if the conversation was not about the essential functions of the job or how to enhance yourself, to improve yourself, and better yourself in relation to your job function, they knew I didn't want to hear it. Real talk. And that was real. You know how some folks on jobs, they want to gossip, stir up mess. I'm telling you, in my 41 years of working in the workforce, all of my co-workers, supervisors, managers, they knew not to bring that kind of conversation to me, because I would stop them. I say, well, what you're seeing right now has nothing to do, number one, with my job, has nothing to do with the mission, goals, and objective of this organization. I don't want to hear gossip. I don't entertain gossip, and I would stop them cold. And you do that enough, they don't even come to your office. Because I don't have time for that. And by me having that approach, Rural, that had a direct impact on me getting multiple promotions, multiple bonuses throughout my work history. Even when I was in the military, all of my promotions meritoriously, never gotten written up, all of the 41 years of my adult life, all the way up until I retired September of 2023. And so, like I said, and how I was able to do this, like I said, I made it my business to enhance my skills, to develop myself outside of that job. The last 25 years of my working life, I simultaneously had my company, making money under my company, Paris and Associates Resource Center, utilizing my powerful credentials. So the last 25 years of my working history, I was working state government and my company simultaneously. So when I retired, I'm still making money utilizing my credential under my company, seeing my clients 2 days a week. So that validates this power. And I tell people, it don't matter if you have a W-2 job. I don't care what your position is on that job. Still develop your skills, cultivate your skills, and master your skills outside of that job. Real talk. In a way where you can generate another stream of income outside of that job that has nothing to do with that job. Real talk. And this is how I survive. And I tell anybody, these skills had a direct impact on me excelling in my career in the workforce. It kept me out of mess. It kept me out of drama. Real talk. Because I've seen throughout my journey people getting fired left and right, and I just observe. I don't say nothing. And getting fired, you can go on social media, people live streaming themselves getting fired on these jobs, and if you listen to them, they're engaging in toxicity, negativity, toxic behavior. If you listen to them, if you listen closely enough, high probability when you see people getting fired on these jobs, it is directly related to in terms of them not performing the essential functions of their job, or them not abiding by the HR policies and procedures. Real talk. If you listen well enough, because when a person is getting fired from a job, by me with my thinking, and I even had people tell me, I've had conversations with people when they would tell me in regards to them getting fired, then I just listen and listen and listen. And as I'm listening, they ain't even asking no questions. As I'm listening and listening, and they don't even be realizing that a lot of the words that be coming out of their mouth ties into the reason you got fired, such as being late all the time. Being 15, 20 minutes late and thinking that that's okay. Or arguing with coworkers, or arguing with your supervisor. All of that ties into behavior and conduct that can have a direct impact on getting fired. Companies now are got policies and procedures in place where they don't want you on your cell phone when they're hiring you to perform the essential functions of your job. There are so many people who are losing their jobs left and right because they cannot stay off social media when they're on the clock, when these companies and jobs are paying you to perform the essential functions of your job versus being on social media for the whole shift. Real talk, people. So many of these things that I just said has a direct impact on how I have been able to survive in this workforce 41 years of my adult life. I retired September of 2023. I made sure that I was performing the essential functions of my job, made sure I was following policies and procedures of HR. I did not entertain gossip, toxic, pessimistic people on these jobs in any shape, form, or fashion. And most important, I kept folks out of my business. Real talk. Because like I was saying, when I was in the workforce and got my master's degree, nobody in that organization knew I was even in graduate school to get the degree conferred. The only way they knew I had got that master's degree, HR sent out information to let the organization know, congratulating me that I had got that master's degree. Even hired September of 2023, people who were working with me shoulder to shoulder for 12, 13, 14 years had no idea that I was retiring until my last hour on the job before I exit up out of the workplace, the workforce forever. The only person who knew I was retiring was HR because they had to do my retirement packet. So again, share this information. Somebody might need to hear this in regards to how I have been able to survive 41 years of working my adult life in the workforce, and I fully retired September of 2023. That's all I have. Simple fidelity, that I'm going to leave you in the care of your own conscience. Have a great day.